On today's show, we talk about the Mavs preseason. How ready is Luka Doncic? And what do we take away from what we saw from the Mavs in the preseason? Talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
We have Kyrie.
You are Locked On Mavs.
Great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
Still can't even build.
And welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager at the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. The best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day on any podcast platform. Leave a 5-star review, like the video on YouTube, comment anything below on YouTube, or watch us on Channel 29 KFAA here in Dallas. Shout out if you're watching us on TV today. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And joining me, as always, my co-host, 10-year media member vet, the One More Thing King. What you got for us, Isaac Harris?
Guys, if you are watching this on TV, I want some screenshots. I want some pictures of where you're watching this, as long as it's not like a sketchy place.
I was gonna say screenshots, like he wants you to take a picture of your TV.
Are you calling me old?
No, like a screenshot would like the video's gonna look the same on YouTube and on the TV.
I don't know. Maybe
a screenshot of it would just look the same.
I don't know.
It's gonna look like it looks like right now. Yeah. So today's episode, we're gonna get into questions we still have remaining from the preseason. We'll talk about Luka and Kyrie and Klay together. We'll talk about the rotation a little bit. We'll give some of our takeaways from preseason since now we've seen all 4 games, and we'll do all that. But I wanted to start real quick right here. Yeah, today is our first day on KFAA, the Channel 29. We will be played, I think, around 4:30 every day. And yeah, shout out to the WFAA crew and everybody there. And shout out if you're watching us or finding us out on KFAA. We'll be played right before Mavs pregame on game days. That's pretty awesome. So shout out to everybody there, and shout out to you watching if you're watching on KFAA today.
It's pretty cool. You know, when thinking of a new name, it's a pretty original name too. You know, for a channel. to go
KFAA.
just change the first letter of it.
Went from Wa to Ka.
Is this WFAA? No, it's KFFA.
All right, let's start here today. The biggest question the Mavs have after preseason is how ready is Luka Doncic? Everything hinges on him. He is the MVP candidate. He is the guy that we think has the best case to take the number 1 player in the NBA title this season. He's the one that everything revolves around. The Mavericks don't do anything. They don't go anywhere without Luka Doncic pushing them and getting them there. And we saw 0 minutes of Luka Doncic the entire preseason. We did, though, see him practice on Saturday, which is a really good sign. Seems like he's doing well. The Mavs played preseason very cautious with Luka and with Kyrie. Kyrie sat out of 2 preseason games just with rest. And so the big question about Luka is he ready? And I don't know if we know that answer quite yet.
No, we don't know the answer. You know, last time we saw him play meaningful basketball was in the NBA Finals after this marathon of a season.
Slovenia had an Olympic qualifying run. He went out there. That was meaningful.
Okay, sure, yeah. I thought you were just gonna bring up the Dragic game, and I'm like, no, don't bring that up.
Not bring up that one.
But you know, for a lot of people, last time you saw him play some big time games were NBA Finals against Boston, and I wouldn't say that he was. This is no excuse, guys. I wouldn't say he was fully 100%. There's a lot of people that's not 100% in the finals too. So it's like you have this off season, and you're like, all right, when's he going to get his break? What's the off season program going to look like? And then for the past 6 seasons, or I'd say 5 seasons of his career, we've always kind of like looked forward to media day of, hey, how's he going to be, showing up to media day, and he shows up to this media day, and whether fans like it or not, the conditioning of Luka Doncic is going to be a storyline for a little bit. And it was a storyline, but in a good way. He looked really good. He looked with the common eye, he looked great, and he looked a little slimmer and all of that, but yet we haven't got to see him actually in an NBA game yet this preseason. So it is the number 1 question. He is, the MVP favorite of the NBA right now. We haven't seen a minute yet in the preseason. So he could show up on Thursday and put up 45 in the first game, or he could show up and look a little rusty. And like both of them, I wouldn't be shocked by.
Especially if Harrison Barnes is going to be guarding him in that first game. I think we're
Whoa.
close. I think we may be
He
close
likes
to
HB. HB's great.
I know, but guarding Luka Doncic, I don't know if I like him like that. We do know that Luka has been prepping and getting ready for this season and started a little bit earlier than he has in past seasons. He was practicing with that team that his dad is the GM of over in Slovenia. Like he was doing those practices. He's on the court. He was getting ready. His trainer has come over with him and has been with the Mavericks and has been the last couple years here, but he's been prepping and he looks good. Like all the pictures that we've seen, all like seeing him in person, all that looks like he's good, looks like he's ready. But the fact that we haven't seen Luka in preseason at all and don't know if he's ready and don't know the answer to that question yet means that all the rest of the takeaways from preseason, from a Mavs macro perception are not like are incomplete. We don't know what this team is without seeing Luka. So we can talk about what we saw from Klay, what we saw from Najee Marshall, what we saw from Quentin Grimes, some of the new guys, but we don't know what it's all going to look like without Luka Doncic. And so this team is still kind of an unknown to us.
That's kind of the number one thing I think coming out of preseason is it was kind of like an incomplete preseason that you're never going to, come out of a preseason and be like, dude, this dude's a star or this dude's a bust or whatever it is, or this signing was a home run or a failure based off preseason games. But you at least want to get, some run in the system of like the roles that they're going to be playing. And that's why this whole preseason or over the past few weeks, I've kind of been preaching the same thing about Klay Thompson, that like Klay was brought in to play a role off of Luka and Kyrie. And Kyrie set out a lot of the preseason. Luka set out the entire preseason. So we haven't even gotten to see Klay play alongside these two guys. The easy shots and the spacing and all the stuff that he's going to bring. I would say even Najee Marshall played out of position a lot of times too. So you could go down through the roster and look at, some of the roles Dinwiddie played in the preseason. And it's not excuses. It's just kind of like an incomplete or a TBD for the makeup of this rotation and roster until you see it, because this team is built around the MVP favorite. That's just how it is.
Turns out when you don't have one of the two best players in the NBA playing on your team's going to look completely different. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine that we don't know exactly what this team is going to look like. And so then one of my other questions that has to do with the same thing is we still haven't seen Luka, Kyrie, and Klay defend together. It's one of my biggest questions for the whole offseason is how will they defend together? Can they defend together at a high enough level enough to get, to win in the playoffs, to win high leverage games, to, if they play enough in the regular season, can they hold their own enough to make this defense a top 10, top 15 defense like we hope that it will be? And yeah, we don't know the answer to that question yet.
Yeah, somebody texted me earlier today and were like, hey, where are you at? Are you like high on this team? Or I feel like the national media pods that he'd been listening to are kind of like lower on this team. And because I feel like a lot of people are just taking that natural angle of, hey, Derrick Jones Jr. started. He was their primary wing defender. He guarded these guys like an SGA in the playoffs or an Anthony Edwards or something. And all of that is completely true. And then they're like doing this subtraction of like, well, Klay's just not that. And it's like, they're not signing Klay to be Derrick Jones Jr. So it's just, they're going to be shifting some of their things. They're going to be a better offense. And yes, do I think that they're going to be the same defense or a top 5 defense? No, I don't think they're going to be a top 5 defense. And I have the same questions that Nick has when these three guys are out on the floor. How do they cover themselves? Because I wouldn't say all three of those guys are, they're not getting all defensive first team votes this season.
Not anymore.
not
Luka
anymore.
got some in the past. Klay was on one before, but
yes, he did. But I would say one of the positives of this preseason was looking at Dereck Lively and just how good he looked over some of these games and these minutes, that he had this incredible rookie season. He's coming back for this, sophomore season. And man, this dude looks like he is on it and had a heck of an offseason and is going to have an even bigger sophomore season. And I bring him up because that's the anchor of the defense. So if you are going to struggle on the perimeter, you better have an anchor down low. And it looks like Dereck Lively is going to be that.
Yeah, and seeing Lively and PJ together again reminded you of just how much length and how much like switchability those two guys give you in that defense. And it made me feel better just seeing it all together. Just made me feel a little bit better about that trio of Luka, Kyrie, and Klay. To have those guys behind you and to have those guys being the ones switch onto the players that are going to be the problem area for the Mavericks, I mean, that's going to be fine. And also, Klay was okay defensively in the preseason. Like, I don't think we saw Klay get super exposed in the preseason defensively. And I don't think the Mavericks were trying their hardest on defense in the preseason. So, two things. Want to see how ready Luka is, and it looks like he is super ready for this season. And then we want to see the Luka, Kyrie, Klay backcourt defend together, and we think that it's going to be okay because of that back line and because of how the Mavs scheme and all that, how it fits together. But coming up, let's talk about some of our other questions. I want to know what the rotation looks like, and I've got one specific question about it that I don't think Jason Kidd is going to answer for maybe a month or so. We'll talk about that and more.
Especially not from you.
Coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavericks is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is there when you have issues in your life. Isaac, you've been to therapy.
I have.
I've also been to therapy, and we've worked through things in our life. We've talked to each other about our therapy. We talked to our therapist
Therapy with Nick.
And then we come back and we do therapy after the show sometimes. And you just need somebody in your life that is either, that is unbiased, that hasn't known you your whole life, to talk through some of those things, and BetterHelp can provide you that person. So whether you have done therapy before, whether you haven't done it before, thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, which is awesome. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. Appreciate you and every one of you for checking out the show. If you're watching on TV today, hello. This is Locked On Dallas Mavericks, and Isaac is.
Sorry, guys, my son is not asleep right now.
He's been visited by the spirit of basketball coming out this week. Let's go back to some of our questions about after preseason. And one of my questions, I think, is just a small hand. Just a small hand appeared on Isaac's shoulder. And one of my questions about the Mavericks and this team is what the rotation will look like. And I don't know if we know exactly what that is going to look like just yet. But I do know one new thing is that Maxi practiced on Saturday. We have not seen Maxi at all in the preseason, just like Luka, but we saw that he practiced on Saturday, and I think that that's something that's significant because I do expect him to still be part of the rotation.
100% going to be part of the rotation. Maxi gives them something that the other two guys don't, at least not yet for Dereck Lively. Dereck Lively, we want Dereck Lively to be a stretch five one day, and I think he will be that one day. But Maxi is that right now. And when Maxi's healthy, I saw a tweet during one of the preseason games, and it was like, hey, Mavs fans are not going to like this, but it was during a certain run of the game. Like, this shows that Maxi's still important to this team.
Yeah.
He is important to this team. He just gives them a unique wrinkle that you got to be able to have in certain matchups. So now the thing with them is they got to keep him healthy. Keep Maxi healthy to where you can pull him out there. He's kind of like a relief pitcher that you roll out in some of these moments that you're like, can I get a couple innings out of you? And you can rely on Maxi when he's hitting that outside shot.
And we did learn what his injury was from. I don't know if that had been reported before, but he said it happened the day before training camp. Same thing as Luka. He stepped on somebody's foot, and it was just a minor ankle tweak, and it wasn't like a big deal. And so I think that's okay. They played it really cautious. They played it cautious with Luka, played it cautious with Kyrie, played it cautious with Maxi, and that's totally fine. I do wonder how his three-point shot looks, because last we saw him, he was very nervous on that three-point shot, and they need him to actually take threes if they want him to be that stretch five again. But you're totally right in that they need that extra look. They just need that stretch five to throw out there every once in a while. They need that big lineup with, if you can put PJ and Maxi and Lively or Gafford out there, that's just such a bigger look lineup to play against some of these other teams.
Yeah, I mean, I lost my train of thought. I heard something drop in your office, and I was like, "Well, God, what?"
You're getting visited by spirits. My spirits are dropping things. It's Halloween season, spooky season.
This whole place is haunted right here. But no, in Maxi's switchability, when he's healthy, he can switch out on the perimeter, and that's what made him such a unique person there when, back a few years ago when he really kind of started hitting his stride in Dallas of like, you got this guy who's hitting all these threes. We've seen what he did, against Utah in the playoffs. but he can defend the rim and switch on the perimeter too. So, but he's had some injury histories and stuff, and with his back, some of the stuff with his back and stuff. So, yeah, I'm curious to see how that plays out. What's his role off the bench and all of that. Can I tell you somebody who I think deserves some love this preseason?
Oh, let's go.
Can I go? Okay, so I know end of roster guys typically just kind of like get glossed over, all right? Because it's like, hey, we always have like one or two of these guys, and every year they kind of show out in the preseason or summer league, and then they get one of these last spots, and some fans get excited about them. Some people just write them off, and it's like, hey, they're just going to spend a lot of time in Frisco, and you're just like, that's it. They'll get some minutes here and there.
You either get to the end of the year and everyone knows who that player is, or nobody knows. Like Brandon Williams. Did anybody know at the end of the year who Brandon Williams was last year? Or AJ Lawson? Felt like everybody knew who he was.
And especially if they don't get a chance,
That's right. Give him a chance.
Give him a chance. But I actually want to talk about something because I actually believe in what this is one of the first years in one of these situations where somebody gets a two-way spot or into roster spot that I'm like, I actually think this guy's gonna like turn into something in the league, and that's Jay-Z and Gortman.
Let's go, Jazz.
So Gortman's like his story and stuff, like going to the league is so fascinating to me because Gortman was this like 5-star like recruit coming out of high school, had a 94 grade, okay, and had offers from all these schools, Kansas, Florida, Texas, Clemson, a bunch of D1 schools, bunch of big time basketball schools. He turned pro after his junior year of high school. He's like, I'm not going to play my senior year because I want to go pro. And he goes and plays for Overtime Elite, and which is on the same roster with like the Thompson twins. He kind of gets overshadowed, all this stuff. You even have an article, our friend Rafael Barlow, who wrote this piece on him, and it was like, or not on him, but it was like 5 guys that's going to improve their draft stock. And this was maybe, I think, last spring. We're talking about like early in 2023. And he had this quote from this NBA scout, and it said, he reminds me a little bit of Dennis Schroeder. He was a top recruit out of high school, and if he chose the college route, he'd probably be someone that the NBA invites to the green room. And that was so intriguing to me. And somebody who I didn't know a ton about Gortman coming into like training camp. He gets this training camp invite. He comes and plays in the preseason. He's this 6'2" guard. But what's really unique about him is he has a 6'8" wingspan.
Yeah.
And one of the first things you start notice about him on the floor is he's got the handles, he's got the feel for the game, but he can finish down below. Like he had with that wingspan, he has these angles and stuff on these shots that is like, all right, that's kind of unique. Not every young guard has that. And then he starts hitting all these threes and stuff, and you're like, all right, are we having one of these like Pierre Jackson
Papa God?
Yeah, like 2.0 of like the small guards.
Remember Jonathan Gibson? Remember he averaged 50 points in China?
And Jonathan Gibson, like these smaller guards who put up a bunch of numbers stuff. I just don't think he's that. I think he can be something really good on the defensive end with his wingspan and what we saw some in the preseason. And we know he's got the shot. He can finish in the paint. So he gets this final, two-way spot from the Mavericks. That was, some of the news at the end of last week, in which they waived some of their guys and kind of finalized their roster going into, this coming week, this first week of the preseason. And he gets that two-way spot. And I just wanted to throw that out there that I don't think he's a normal two-way guy. I think he's going to be something in the league. I don't know what it is. I'm not saying, hey, Gortman's going to be an all-star, all-NBA point guard. I don't know that. But I do think he's more than just hey, he's going to get a two-way spot. We're never going to hear about him. I think he has something to his game. I like him a lot.
For everybody that wanted Dennis Smith Jr. back on the Mavs, that were like, the Mavs were deciding between Dennis Smith Jr. or Spencer Dinwiddie, and there's a lot of Mavs fans that were all for Dennis Smith Jr. This kind of scratches that itch a little bit. The pesky defender, they're about the same height. He's got, I think Gortman has a bigger wingspan. I think he's a better shooter than Dennis is right now.
I'll be honest. He played better than Spencer Dinwiddie this preseason.
I think he did too. He literally pushed AJ Lawson off the roster.
And Lawson, has had this two-way spot. But if you said, and you can't do this, but if you took Spencer Dinwiddie's name completely off and all his history and everything, and you just brought in somebody who didn't know anybody about these two guys and said, all right, here you go. Which guy's the better player?
I mean, you could do that with Klay. You could do that with a couple players on the Mavs.
No, but I'm just saying, it's a similar type of role.
He played well.
he could play off the bench, and you'd be like, oh yeah, well that's the guy that they signed to be like a 6-man type of guy, to be a third guard and all this stuff. Look, he's balling out. So little biased because of preseason, maybe, but I'm also that guy who's typically like, yeah, I don't really care. That's a 2A spot, and it's like they're never gonna play.
How many times have we seen this Mavericks team just put 3 guys at the end of that training camp roster that have no shot to make this team? They know who the 3 two-way guys are, or the 2 or however many it was at the time. They just throw 3 or 4 guys at the end of this roster, have no shot. And this year we finally have one that literally pushed a guy from the active roster off the team, essentially. That's definitely notable for him. He also
it's a gimmick or something like that.
Right.
Like,
or somebody where you go, okay, they just have no shot. And Gortman actually did it. Like, we talk about them every year. Who's got a chance to make the roster? This is actually happening.
Could he be the Salah measuring? Like
it happened.
Salah had some moments. Like Salah, like I know it was some of the years that we were counting some ping pong balls that Salah was getting some of that, but still, it's like Salah came in, beat some guys for a final roster spot, and the roster spot
on the court too. With Gortman too, he had a thing that I thought was one of the funniest things kids said in the preseason. He was asked about Jay-Z and Gortman, and he said, yeah, he was terrible in summer league. I don't know if I've ever heard Jason Kidd outright say somebody like played terrible or was terrible, but he said it as a way to give him credit for how Jazz Gortman grew since summer league. Since summer league, he's grown a ton. They've seen it, and they see more than us. They see all the training camp stuff, all the practices, all the scrimmages, and all that kind of stuff. So Jazz Gortman, 100% a takeaway from preseason. Coming up, let's talk about what we saw from some of these other guys. I have some thoughts about Dereck Lively because I think the Mavs really tried to do something with him. Let's talk about that and more.
I don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Little Locked On Mavs brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of props and odds, things that you can use to get in on the action. Go check out FanDuel, see what is available for you. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return. NBA, same thing. You put down $5. Your first $5, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. They've got games. We've got games already. If you are interested, the Mavs game on Thursday. Oh, line changed. What do you think the line is between the Mavs and Spurs, Isaac?
Ooh, I'm going to go -6.5 Mavs.
It is Mavs -8. It was 8.5 like 2 days ago. Okay. And now it's Mavs -8. Big favorite there for the Dallas Mavericks. So go check that out. See what's available for you in your area. And then also go check out the Mavs championship odds. They have the same odds as the Nuggets, plus 1,100. They have worse odds than the Sixers, plus 1,000, and then the Timberwolves, plus 1,000. I don't know about those two. I feel like I would have the Mavs higher than both those teams for various reasons. Yes. Go check it out at FanDuel. See what is available for you. Again, that's FanDuel.com. All right, Isaac, we're talking about preseason. We've asked our big questions after preseason. We talked about Jay-Z and Gortman, who had a great preseason. He was probably the one like basketball takeaway from preseason. But I've got a couple other takeaways. And I want to start here with Dereck Lively. Dereck Lively added some stuff to his game. We hear this every year. Oh, I tried to add things to his game. How many years in a row did Dwight Powell, he was going to add a 3-point shot to
stretch 5
to his game and become a stretch 5? We just kept hearing it from guys. But Dereck Lively, the floaters out of the pick and roll, we saw him hit up a couple of post ups and post hooks, and we saw him run a bunch of like handoff offense when Luka obviously didn't play. But they ran a bunch of that through him, and I'm just very interested to see how he takes a step forward this season, especially offensively, because it looked like he showed a little bit more in this preseason than we saw before.
Felt more comfortable with the ball in his hands on the perimeter. Yes, we all seen the play of him taking it full court, spin move, and all that, which is just beautiful. Did you see where Milwaukee's interested in Thanasis and resigning him?
You think they'll get him?
I don't know. There's a sweepstakes.
I was going to say, is Sentinel going to post about the sweepstakes for Thanasis?
If PJ Tucker has some, then
Thanasis PJ Tucker sweepstakes.
Where's the FanDuel?
Hilarious tweet. FanDuel doesn't do that.
-280.
I'm proud of them.
For Thanasis in Milwaukee. But no, I think for me, one of the number one things for Lively is, and I felt like you've seen a little bit of that in the preseason. I don't want to overreact too much, but is how comfortable he is guarding on the perimeter.
Yeah,
because he's gonna have to be able to switch and hold his ground without fouling. Fouling is like number one thing that he's got to get better at. I think some of it comes with just being a rookie and you just don't get the benefit of doubt with it with the whistles. But also he's got to be a little bit less aggressive, or at least a little smarter with it. And it comes on the perimeter too. He's got to be able to switch. And it felt like you saw moments in the preseason that he did switch on the perimeter. He had his hands up. He was super active. That's where I think he takes that step. Then nationally, he's getting a whole different, like, it's a whole different defensive conversation. If he's defending on the perimeter and defending down low as like this anchor and holding his ground against a Jokic or somebody, that's where it's like, well, what else do you want from a big man?
Yeah, when the Mavericks didn't have a center, and they were looking for one. Remember the summer where the Mavs were going to trade the 10th pick for Clint Capella and all that? Like, I went, that's a tough one. I went through every single center and was just like, all right, who's a good rebounding center, rim protection center, who can add some stuff on offense, rim rolling center. And I just put them all in categories. And one of the very rare ones is a center that can defend the rim and can switch as well. There's just not very many centers that can do that. So if he can, it becomes part of that group of the Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis. There's just not many in that group like that. That's an elite group of centers that can do all those things. And it checks so many boxes for the Mavericks, especially in their defense. We talked about their scheme earlier and how their scheme's going to help the Luka, Kyrie, Klay trio to defend better. There's a lot of switching and there's a lot of communication, and it's a lot of Luka, let the guard go into the lane so that Lively can come over and switch and help behind you. And then somebody else rotates, and that's by design. The blow by stat is a by design stat. Okay. And so I think if Lively can do more in that scheme, in that rotation, then it just opens up a lot more defensively. And it takes Lively's stock to a whole other level. He's
a future star in the league. I believe that.
Let's go.
And nothing's changed with that. I think somebody else that showed some stuff in the preseason was Jaden Hardy. I thought he had moments. I thought he looked more comfortable. I thought he looked more confident.
Got a chance.
And he finally got that chance. The like backup guard position is still just like, I don't know what's gonna like happen, because you have Dante Exum, who's now going to be out for a while with the broken wrist. You have Dinwiddie, who's brought in on this super cheap contract, but it's like, hey, Spencer, come back home to mama. And
they kind of build him as a spot starter and in the preseason. If I'm just going off preseason, I would not feel comfortable with that.
And that was probably what they told him, was like, hey, that role you played with JB and Luka, come back and do that again. That's when you played at your best. Then you have Jaden Hardy, who looked better than Dinwiddie did in the preseason, but it's like, all right, well, who's going to get those minutes? And then and I know we just talked about him, but then you have Gortman after that. And it's like, guys, I'm just going to be real. Like, we're getting a week or two into the season and Dinwiddie's really struggling. I'm going to be throwing out some Gortman propaganda. Okay.
Wow.
Of what are we doing? But it's the whole backup guard stuff, especially with Hardy playing well at times, that I feel like I know what Kid's going to do, but once you think what Jason Kidd's going to do, then he does the opposite.
Dinwiddie's going to get
You gotta ask them. I'm just the coach.
Dinwiddie's going to get a long leash. They're going to try him for a while. They're going to give him the benefit of the doubt for a while. And it could be months. It could be like a couple months that they trot him out there and to figure out, all right, what's his role? And Kid will say, yeah, he's trying to figure out what his new role is on this team. And he's trying to figure out how to play with, and he'll say that. And it will be frustrating if that's the way that it goes and all that. But yeah, the Hardy versus Dinwiddie, I think the one of the wildest things from the preseason was when Kid said that Dante Exum was the second string point guard, that he was going to be the one coming off the bench. And then now he's out with the injury until January.
If Exum was healthy, I would be in that camp 100% right now.
Yeah, I think I would too, especially defensively, what he adds to this team, because you're talking about Hardy and Dinwiddie. They don't add a ton defensively. There's some size with both of them there, but other than that, so that one is it. We're talking about guards. Just a preseason takeaway. Kyrie is so locked in. We saw Kyrie.
Dude, I wrote that.
6 of 11 in his first game, and then 6 of 7 from the field in his second game. He had 3 stocks. He had 3 blocks and steals combined, and he was just dialed in. I mean, everything looks real crisp and tight, and I mean, he just looks really ready for this season.
Yeah, I wrote down, Lively, Gortman, Kyrie as like the 3 first like names that I'm like, ooh, impressive, this preseason. Not saying the other guys didn't have some things. Grimes had some things, which by the way, deadline's coming for a Grimes extension. He was in that draft, the Cade Cunningham draft. We saw Moses Moody, get a contract extension yesterday or on Sunday. Same draft as Quentin Grimes, kind of like similar type-ish player. Grimes is 2 years older than Moody, so I wonder if those negotiations. We're recording this on Sunday night, so you might hear something before then on Monday or by the time you listen to this podcast. But I will say, just personally, if it's somewhere around that Moses Moody number, I'm happy. So if they can lock him in, I am curious to see how long that contract is, because there's a lot of contracts on this current roster that are up in 2 years. And I wonder if there's any type of sticking point. Just wondering, I haven't talked to anybody, if there's a sticking point, like a third year type of thing or a fourth year and some guarantees and all that. But whenever that news drops, if you are a Locked On Mavs insider, you will get that news immediately texted to you. And if you want to be a Locked On Mavs insider, you can text the number there at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on KFFAA or YouTube,
they're not watching on there anymore.
No. I was doing so good.
You were doing so good. The nonverbal cue. It was so great. Yeah. So click the link in the description or text the number. As soon as we know anything about it, we'll send you our thoughts and we'll text them straight to you, and we'll do all that. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with Quentin Grimes. The thing I wrote down about Quentin Grimes is that kid might like Grimes a lot. He was kind of one of the first guys off the bench in the preseason. I like him a lot. Yeah, could have been because of who was available and all that, but it felt like Grimes kind of shot up to the list of, all right, a new guy that kid really likes. He started him in that last game over Dinwiddie, over Hardy, over even Najee Marshall. I think that is kind of significant. And so I think Quentin Grimes could be doing a lot. I think if I'm just going to have an opinion about the extension, get it in early, right? Because what if he has a really good season? What if he has a really good season like what Derrick Jones Jr. just had? Now, Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent at the end of this season, and so that's different. So they'll have the right to match any offer.
Nick told me to get it in early.
He said, no, now we're off TV, and now
sorry, you said we were on it.
But
I was talking about taking out the trash.
Oh, right, taking out the trash at night. What if he has a really great year like Derrick Jones Jr. did, and all of a sudden the price is much higher?
Yep.
Like try it. Like get that. I mean, with this new CBA, you want to get it in early. I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna double down on that one. Tomorrow on the show, we're doing a live show. Ooh. I think at like 8 p.m. Central ish. We'll see. We got myself, Isaac, slightly 3-man weave plus Tim Cato of DLLS.
You secured that with his agent?
We have secured it from the agent, and so we'll do
this is right in the middle of freaking Monday Night Football with the Ravens. Fight all of y'all.
You're gonna be fine, and we'll do that. We'll talk about predictions and do all that. So live show on YouTube, and it'll go out on the podcast, go out on the YouTube feed the next couple of days after that.
Will be on TV, Nick.
It will be on TV, so we'll do that. And guys, thanks for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.